free to call us at 462-1959 during the pandemic, because we are not open, but we are monitoring our calls on that number. So as I mentioned, volunteers are fortunately plentiful in times of emergency and disaster. And many of them are government affiliated, as my pie chart here shows. Not all of them that are listed on this pie chart, which I did not make, but it was provided to me. But not all of them am I aware of taking place locally, but many of them are. We have Cert, Volunteers in Prevention, Medical Reserve Corps we don't have in Mendocino County, but they're not, I'll be talking a little bit about something very similar. And Neighborhood Watch, I hope we have a few of those locally. CAL FIRE, I think, may have a volunteer and prevention program. And then moving over to National Service, Corporation for National and Community Service often mobilizes AmeriCorps and CCC teams and other AmeriCorps volunteers in disaster response and disaster preparedness, as well as RSVP, which is a retired senior volunteer program, which is for volunteers over the age of 55. And they also are supported in disaster response by the federal government. Business volunteers, that is really growing in population. That would be, for instance, like one of our local businesses will give, like, you know, I'm just saying off the top of my head, like Savings Bank or Community First Credit Union, maybe our grocery stores. I think Kohl's has a strong volunteer program, Home Depot. But you often, groups of volunteers that all work together want to do something to help, and they usually want to do it together. Community and faith-based, service clubs, they're often very prepared to respond in disaster, and they have something very specific that they want to bring to the table as far as volunteer service goes. Faith-based groups, many churches, synagogues, they want to also volunteer as a group or have their own activity that they're sort of sponsoring and promoting. Ham radio office operators, which we do have here in Mendocino County. Animal rescue groups, that's very popular for animal evacuation and sheltering. And there are a lot of organizations that are, for the most part, all volunteer organizations, such as Salvation Army. Red Cross would be another one. So all of these already organized or affiliated groups will be looking for something to do that they can help in times of disaster. But there also are a lot of people which may be in a group, but they are kind of, in addition to whatever their like service club may be doing, they may still want to do something more with their family or their friends or on their own. And we call these spontaneous volunteers. And that is hundreds and hundreds of people, because everybody wants to help, and that's a wonderful thing. But what we don't want is all of those people not knowing where to go to find out what to do. And so they go to their local fire station or their local police station or the emergency operations center. So we want to keep all of that, all of those individuals away from those locations. So after the Loma Prieta earthquake, talk started about, hey, why can't we have some kind of an organized system to managing these volunteers? And then after 9/11, that became more formalized. And what was a result of that talk was an emergency volunteer center, or an EVC. And that is people who are trained management or volunteer management professionals that have taken training in managing spontaneous volunteers and have a system and all the forms and you know what they're doing. And so in Mendocino County, NCO Volunteer Network was identified to serve as an emergency volunteer center in the case of a large disaster. And we do that in partnership with the Emergency Operations Center, because we need them to communicate to us what volunteer needs are. So NCO Volunteer Network has, if we want to include this current pandemic, we have managed 5 EVCs, starting in, or actually maybe even 6 if you went to the '08 fires. But then in Valley Fire in 2015, followed by the Clayton Fire, and then in 2017, the complex fires, which we had closed down our EVC, but then within a couple months had to open it up again. And then the current pandemic. So we've had a good amount of experience. These pictures are from the MendoLake complex fires. Very busy, very rewarding, but a lot of work. And so this is an in-person EVC, which is really the best way to run an EVC because we can ask for identification, and it feels a lot better sending a volunteer out to do work in the community when you've at least, checked that they are who they say they are. And also a process of mobilizing volunteers in emergencies is determining if they are fit to volunteer, because if it's a wildfire, they may have just lost their home, yet they feel like, okay, I can't go back to my home, I want to help. But it's probably not the best thing for them to be helping. They need to keep care of themselves emotionally. So the process is such that there's a lot of steps before you actually get your volunteer assignment. So we can look for red flags. So that's the best way. But sometimes you have to do your EVC virtually. And in the Valley Fire, we did do it virtually. And that was a little scary, but everything went fine. I think that's another good example of human kindness and concern, is that we had no one that was in it for the wrong reasons, and no issues, at least that I'm aware of, or that were reported to us. And in the current pandemic, it's been the same thing. We've been mobilizing volunteers virtually, very little contact for obvious reasons. So that is the EVC process. Now, one of the things that the majority of people that we see in the Emergency Volunteer Center are interested in doing is helping out in a shelter. We'll have people that say, I'm a cook, I work at this restaurant and I would like to be a cook at the shelter, or they have real specific talents that they can bring to a shelter. However, shelters are most commonly set up by the county Health and Human Services, and they just have them running until Red Cross arrives. So county employees, they're trained in setting up a shelter and getting it up and running. American Red Cross comes in to assist, and they have their regulations that they have to follow. And those are that those working in the shelter be background checked American Red Cross volunteers. So if any of you out there that are listening, have something you can really bring that's of value, and or even if it's just a heart to serve in a shelter, please seriously consider, go to the American Cross website, think about becoming an American Red Cross volunteer. It'll be so helpful to our community. And they have an online sheltering training, and I do work a little bit with them, but I don't know the complete process for becoming a volunteer. But I'm sure someone will be willing to help you out if you just go to the website and get that started. And here are two very happy American Red Cross volunteers. I mean, who wouldn't want to, feel that good after you're done with your volunteer service? So, but if you feel that is not where you want to serve, and you are interested in learning, not only just serving in an emergency, but learning about coming to the aid of your family, your neighbors, your friends in an emergency, or further educating your community in disaster preparedness, you might want to think about becoming a Cert team volunteer. So Cert stands for Community Emergency Response Team. Sometimes I like to say the T is for training, because it is a very intensive and very thorough disaster preparedness and response training. So if we do have a big earthquake, you can see down in the corner that's the Cert training folks learning about cribbing. So you could use that education that you learned to help someone in your neighborhood that may be trapped under some heavy piece of material. In the other picture, you can see they're practicing some search and rescue, I believe. I wasn't at that training, but that's what it looks like to me. There's a search and rescue exercise. You learn how to search a building with no lights. How would you search a building to see if there's survivors when there's no electricity? So these are things you don't think of, and there are proper ways to do that. I just want to point out that the gentleman there in the Army fatigues or camo, he will be following me with a little bit of disaster preparedness, and he is Mendocino County lead CERT trainer. His name's Mike Carter, so you might want to tune in for that. It should be excellent. A lot of times we hear with the CERT training that people feel like they're not capable. Well, everyone is capable. And I want to share with you next a little video, a promotional video that I think communicates better than I could, just how valuable the training is, and that everybody can help in times of emergency when you have CERT training. So I'll just get that started.
We teach people confidence. The confidence that should a situation arise, that you have the capabilities to react to that situation.
It's really empowering to know that you're what's going to be there first, you're what's going to comfort the people.
Our volunteers are made up of really everyone. They are some of the most amazing people that you'll ever meet. They're all different, and they all want to be part of our CERT program for many different reasons.
Everybody brings a skill. That's the beauty of CERT.
So my last thing I'd like to say about CERT is all of our CERT team members are background checked. That comes in super handy, because anytime you need to do something where you might have to go into someone's home or do something that involves children, we need background checked volunteers. So if you're already background checked and you're already associated with Volunteer Network, fantastic. So that's a really great thing about CERT as well. A new program that we have at NCO Volunteer Network that was really picking up speed before the pandemic, but we still are managing to provide these trainings virtually, is Listos. And Listos is a culturally sensitive disaster preparedness training for Spanish-speaking communities in Mendocino County. Ours is specific to Spanish-speaking communities. And we really need volunteer trainers for this. It's very important that for the continuation of the program that we have volunteer trainers. So if you're bilingual and you think that disaster preparedness training in the Spanish-speaking communities is something that appeals to you, please consider taking a Listos basic training. And at that training, you'll learn more about becoming a volunteer trainer. And I have a video about that too, because we really want to see this effectively implemented in Mendocino County. So I want to really give any viewers an idea of what this program is.
Listos is an individual and family public education program that focuses on disasters and emergency preparedness. It started as a program targeting Latino populations, vulnerable populations. We have different cultures within the Listos program. We try to make the curriculum as culturally relevant as we can. We try to incorporate the whole family unit. We encourage children to attend, seniors in the home, parents, caregivers, anybody that's willing to learn a little more in a conversational setting. We talk about what the risks are. Depending on the region that the participants live, we have different risks. This conversational learning allows for the participants to learn through their own experiences, and sharing, information sharing, knowledge on how to have a family plan, how to be better prepared for a disaster or for an emergency, how to have evacuation plans, how to know where your utilities off, why are you going to shut them off, and when do you shut them off. Talk about how to utilize fire extinguisher training. Why do we have smoke alarms at home? Why do we have carbon monoxide detectors? We talk about the importance of emotional support in the aftermath of a disaster. Listos means ready in English, and it's exactly what we want to do with our community. We want to have them ready for that disaster. Listos is the introduction to preparedness, really is that first step. And it engages people to then want to learn more about their preparedness. We want to encourage folks to visit our website. You can find resources there, programs near you, how to sign up for a class. It really is a resource tool for everyone that wants to implement the program in their area. It's a very basic curriculum, grassroots, that I really encourage everyone that can to participate in such a rewarding program.
And I'll be sharing more information about how you could find out about the local CERT program too when I'm finished with my presentation. So one other way that you can volunteer is as a disaster healthcare volunteer. Now, for the most part, this opportunity applies to people in the medical field, but you don't have to be in the medical field because like in our current situation with COVID-19, we're doing testing, but we need people to do some administrative tasks associated with that testing. And so if you have administrative skills, you can sign up as a disaster healthcare volunteer. And it's for like chiropractors, pharmacists, veterinarians, all aspects of the healthcare field. And we have deployed disaster healthcare volunteers to Paradise and to other counties, because that's when you do apply, you can list the counties you're willing to serve in, or you can just stay in your own county if you want. And currently we are recruiting and managing contact tracers that are considered disaster healthcare volunteers. That's a really good example. Many contact tracers do not have a medical background, but they're certainly fit to serve as a disaster healthcare volunteer. And to sign up, you would go to healthcarevolunteer.ca.gov. And the last thing I want to talk about is a VOAD, which is Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, also commonly referred to as a COAD, which really kind of makes a lot of sense, Community Organizations Active in Disaster. The Mendocino VOAD meets, currently we've been meeting monthly. Our next meeting is October 6th at 3 o'clock. It'll be Zoom. But it's organizations such as, we're on that pie chart, really, faith-based, government agencies, nonprofit agencies, anyone who's who has something to bring to the table in the event of a disaster would attend a VOAD meeting. We connect there, we further talk about further training, and we iron things out and get to know each other so that when an emergency or a disaster does occur, we know where the resources are, and we know who to talk to, who the specific person is that knows us and knows our needs, and we know their needs, and we've already connected. So we can make those connections and serve the community much quicker when we meet regular as a VOAD. And we are also part of the Northern California VOAD. So we have regular meetings, which one of our CERT members, or maybe even a few of our members do attend regularly for our surrounding counties. So we're informed of what's happening in Sonoma County right now, what's happening over in Lake County right now, if we're all in communication with each other during blue sky times. So that is also, the Mendocino County VOAD is also organized by NCO Volunteer Network as far as the logistics, setting up the meeting time, keeping the minutes, that kind of thing. Let's see if I got anything else. So this here is just our contact information, which I'll leave up for a few minutes. But before I wrap it up, I'd like to talk about the pandemic. This is a very different disaster, and it has very different needs, which we couldn't have anticipated prior. So, whereas if it's a wildfire, we know we're dealing with, the loss of homes, flood, same thing, damaged homes, damaged communities. The fallout from COVID right now with the isolation, or with sheltering in place, is food insecurities, people not feeling connected, lonely, suicide, increase in suicide and mental health issues. And due to the fact that so many of our volunteers, our faithful, dedicated volunteers, are seniors because they have the time to volunteer. They have a lifetime of skills to contribute. Those volunteers, especially with our rising cases of COVID-19 positive cases, aren't as willing to come out and volunteer. So I would just encourage anyone listening that if you have time that you can hook up with, like in Ukiah, with plowshares, with Meals on Wheels deliveries, please call NCO Volunteer Network. We're establishing an errand running volunteer opportunity so that people who are isolated at home can have household goods brought to their home. We are establishing a really awesome friendly visitor program that's called Good Company. It involves some nutrition aspects and disaster preparedness aspects to make sure that those homebound individuals are ready in time, in time of disaster, during the current disaster already. But we really need volunteers. They're becoming scarce. We also need bilingual contact tracers. If like you have that like kind of, detective kind of spirit and like solving a case and can in our bilingual or even monolingual, please contact us. We could really need contact tracers. We also need volunteers to help us promote just the importance of wearing masks in businesses. Anytime someone enters a small business without wearing a mask, we're putting those businesses at risk or of having to pay fees, which some of them really can't afford at this time. So we really need help getting word out and distributing masks and making sure that everyone in our community is adhering to the mask regulations when they're out in town. So please call NCO Volunteer Network. There's the number there, 462-1959. You can visit our Facebook page. It's NCO Volunteer Network. We have a Facebook page, Ukiah Cert, and we also have a Facebook page, Listos Mendocino. And any of those places you could find information on volunteering. And you can go to our website, volunteernco.org. And if you select Mendocino County Community Volunteer, we will contact you to find out, the community volunteer is our friendly name for a disaster volunteer, and it means you'd like to help out with COVID-19 volunteer activities, and we will get back in touch with you and after you've registered, and we will help you find the perfect volunteer opportunity for you. Thank you very much.